Hey everyone, Jay here. I'm Jay Linesider, and the other night I was invited to speak at the Stuart Rod and Reel Club down in Jensen Beach, Florida. And I want to thank, first of all, Scott and Al and George and all the members who attended for inviting me there and show me a good time. Um, I gave this lecture about fishing for snook under bridges, and I put together a little PowerPoint, and I thought, I would combine all my seminars about using flairhawks and jigs and snook jigs and swim baits into one presentation and get into a little bit of the theory behind why snook bite at certain times and how to do the perfect retrieve. So this is going to be a recreation of that seminar from the other night. First of all, you need to realize and picture in your mind what is going on underwater at night when you're looking, at a bridge. And what better way to figure that out than to look at an underwater picture of a bridge, during the daytime and see how, the snook congregate. And as you can see here, this is a bridge piling right here, and there's another piling and another piling, and then you can see all the snook lined up on the bridge pilings, and see how they're kind of like close to the pilings, and they're actually in between the pilings, and there's some on the other side of the pilings. So basically they're all kind of facing into the current. The current's going this way, and they're all kind of facing into the current. So when you're making your presentation, a good way, but not the only way, which I'll get into later, is to have the lure retrieved from the front of them this way. All right, so here's slide number 2. We also have another bridge piling right here, and you can see the nastiness of all the stuff growing on it. But you can really see in this slide how all the snook are facing the same way. They're facing right towards us, and they're all kind of, within a few feet of this piling. This one over here is the furthest away, but he's still within a few feet of the piling. So, you're obviously going to want to drag your lure next to the pilings, and you're obviously going to want to keep it close to the bottom. They're kind of looking up. Their faces are, and their eyeballs are up on the top of their head, so they can see something going over the top of them. But yeah, you don't want to go too low, but you want to go in this range right here. So that's where you want to retrieve your lure. All right, on this slide you can see really a lot of the growth on the piling. You can imagine if your braided line hits this piling, it's going to go pow in less than half a second. And this is why we need to use the heavy braid. This is why we use the heavy tackle. This is why we have the lockdown drag. Because if the fish bites over here or over here, you got to yank him out before he decides to go around this piling or under the piling and around this way. So that's why we use the heavy gear. All right, so let me get you oriented here into what you're looking at. This is your typical bridge. This is the roadway, and these are the fenders. This is a bridge that's going through the intercoastal. This is north, this is south. The fenders are on both sides, curving around this way. And here you have a little structure here. This is where the bridge tender is. This is actually a draw span. It may or may not have a light, but I've depicted a light here. And a lot of the bridges do have lights on the bridge tender's house, and they shine into the water and they form a shadow line separate and above from the rest of the shadow lines. But a lot of these intercoastal bridges, I think almost all of them, they have a clearance number down here, and they have a light, and the light is going to project around here, and you're going to have a shadow line around that light down here. And then on the opposite side, there's going to be another sign up here, and it's going to have a clearance sign, and it's going to project a shadow line around there. And then of course you're going to have the overhead lights, which I'll get into in the next slide. But in this case, the current's going this way, and I put some snook down here for demonstration purposes. They're going to be piled up around this light here and around this light here. This would probably be the most preferable one, but sometimes when the current's ripping, they'll want to be down current and away from the light, or hiding from the current on the back side of this piling here. Now, this is a similar slide, same bridge and everything, and you got the current going this way. You got your snook on both sides here, the downside of the current, and I'm trying to demonstrate how and where you'd want to cast. You'd want to position your boat down here somewhere. You don't want to park on top of the snook, and you want to cast up here, cast here somewhere underneath. Obviously, you don't want to cast on the bridge. You want to cast underneath somewhere here and draw your lure down this way, and hopefully when the snook sees it, goes by his face, he eats it. And then same thing here, you got this side, they could be hugging along the fenders, or they could be hugging along, on the outside of the fenders. It all depends on the current. Some may be over here, some may be over here. They're not going to always be in the same place, but they're going to have their favorite places, and you should, jot those down. If you hook a fish, in here, when the tide's going this way, make a mental note. Say, hey, I caught a fish right here. I need to cast right here. So those are some things to keep in mind. And, did you catch it on the side with the light? Or did you catch it on the side with not a light? You need to know those things. Now, typically, your intercoastal bridges are going to be dredged out, so it's going to be deeper in the middle. That's going to mean more current flow. So, typically it might be better, the fishing might be better, where there's more flow in the middle. Or if there's just a little bit of flow, it might be flowing better, towards the middle as opposed to outside. But don't rule out the outside, and obviously cast up this way and bring your lure across the face of these snook that are going to be down here on the outside. All right, now here's the same bridge, and now I've depicted some lights on the top. These are overhead lights. These are the ones the cars are going to be using, to see the bridge and see where they're going on the bridge. So you're going to have some overhead street lights, let's call them, and they are going to create a shadow line. Now you can see, even though this is daytime, there's a shadow line cast all the way across here from the sun. That's obviously from the sun. But, depending on where the lights are, there's going to be different shadow lines. It could be here or it could be here. It just depends, or it could be on both. If you have lights on this side and lights on this side, you're going to have shadow lines, on both sides of the bridge if you have a lot of overhead lights like that. But in this case, I'm using the natural sun and shadow from the bridge, from the sun, to depict, where the snook would be. They're going to be stacked up along here. They're going to be stacked up in the middle. And as I said a minute ago, there could be a lot better flow in the middle. So you might have a lot more snook in the middle here for this shadow line where there's better flow plus the shadow line. So, but there could be some over here depending on if there's a shadow, projected from any lights that are on this bridge tender's house. So that's the overhead street light shadow line. All right. Now, as far as where you'd want to cast, all right, you want to position yourself, on this side, and you would want to be casting in front of them, and you'd want to get them a good look at your lure. That some of them might not be right at the shadow line. They might be 10 feet in front of the shadow line. So you want them to see it coming towards them. So you want to cast it up in this area. There could be fish up here. So just make sure you cover all this area well into the shadow line. And then they might be back way under here. So, position the boat here, cast up to here, cast up to here, But cast and bring it along with the current most of the time. 90% of the time, I'd say cast and go with the current. Now, Dave Justice told me you don't always have to go with the current. There are times when, going against the current will trigger a reaction strike, they'll be facing this way. And if you bring your lure, if you park your boat here, put it on anchor lock over here, and you cast to here and you bring it this way, sometimes that'll trigger a bite. You know, you never know. If you're not getting a bite, you might as well try that. Now, it's probably not going to work if the current's ripping, but every once in a while, you're not doing well and you're not getting any bites, try going against the current, see what happens. Maybe you can get a reaction bite from those fish. I have this numbered 1, 2, 3, 4. And the reason I did that is because you should break up the bridge into like 4 quadrants. And, you know, if you caught fish over here, this would be number 1. Number 1 would probably be my, you know, preferred area to start, not knowing anything else. You know, current, you know, hitting the light or the fender at the front right there with the light on it. That'd be my, you know, preference, because, you know, those aggressive fish that are trying to feed, they're going to want to get the first dibs at, you know, whatever bait comes through the bridge. And, you know, this light is going to be the place to be for those guys. Now, the ones that are a little slacker, and, you know, maybe if the current's really ripping, you'll have more fish down by number 3, and they'll want to be out of the current. And if a lot of bait's flowing through, they won't mind being in this, you know, behind the fender spot in this light right here. And then there could be a lot of fish right in here too, hugging tight to this fender if there's a lot of current. And, you know, same thing with over here. The big ones don't need the light to feed on, but sometimes they do, and sometimes they don't. So, you know, this could be a good downside current place for some of the bigger fish, and they'll see, you know, the baits coming and detect them, you know, without the use of any kind of light. But the younger little ones, you know, they're going to use the light, and sometimes that annoys the bigger fish because the younger ones are quicker and faster and they get the baits. But they'll be happy. The bigger ones sometimes are happy over here. They don't have to compete with the young quick bucks, you know, that are darting all over the place. They're just as happy over here on the dark side of the fender down current. Or they could be on the up current side, you know. It all just depends. But anyway, I would start off here. I'd make all my casts up here, and through here, and through here. And then I'd say, okay, I've worked this quadrant. You know, that might take 5 or 10 minutes, you know, moving and repositioning the boat to do that. And then I would try number 2. And, you know, I'd position the boat so that I could, you know, cast and bring my line across that fender. Then I'd put the boat over here and bring the line across this fender. And then, you know, so I'd explore out to this area here. And, you know, while I'm down here, I'd probably go this way. So, yeah, I've worked number 1, I've worked number 2, and then I go down to number 3. And, you know, I'd position the boat down here somewhere off the screen, and I'd cast it up to here, and I'd cast it up to here. Those would be my primary places of casting. And then I'd cast it over here, you know, and then I'd have the boat inside and I'd cast over here. If you have 2 guys, a great way to work a bridge is you park, you know, or you put it on anchor lock right here, and one guy works this side and one guy works that side. Do that all the time, and, you know, you never know who's going to get bit first. And that's another point. You know, the first couple of casts you run right through here, those are your high percentage chances of hooking up. You know, the first couple times you run through there, you're very likely to get hooked up. So be ready, have your drag ready, be ready with your decision on, you know, what you're going to do with the boat, if the fish goes this way or that way. And, you know, be prepared. Don't be shocked when you get whacked and thumped, you know, right off the bat when you make your first few casts. And then as you keep casting, you know, your chances are diminishing that you're going to get a strike. So, you know, if you try here, try over here, try over here. You know, just keep trying different spots. Try over here, on the surface, on the bottom, and on the middle. You know, just keep trying different things. And the same here. If you got a buddy, you know, have him try on the surface, try on the bottom, try in the middle, cast over here, try on the surface, try on the bottom, try in the middle. Just keep repeating something slightly different, either the speed or the depth or the angle, until, you know, you've completed area. Hopefully you'll get a bite and you'll say, hey, this is what worked, I'm going to try it again. But if not, rotate over after 10 or 15 minutes, whatever, and try this area. And then start casting over here, and same thing, high, low, medium, until, you develop a pattern of where they're biting and where they're hitting. You might get a bite on the bottom and you might get a bite on the top, all in the same bridge and all at the same spot. You never know. But some fish are going to be high, some are going to be low, some are going to be here, some are going to be there, some are going to be here. So, you got to find the hungry ones and the ones you're going to fool with your baits. All right, let's talk about the lures. This is a Flairhawk 1.5 ounce. You're going to want to use like a 1 to 2 ounce unless you're like at a really fast inlet. But we're talking about bridges here. If you're at a bridge close to an inlet, you might need a 2.5 ounce, but I don't know. It just depends. But typically you're going to be using a 1 to 2 ounce jig. So that's what I got here. And then you're going to want the ones with the stronger hooks, as I've said on my other seminars. You're going to want that 7 or 8.0 super strong hook. So when you got that 20 pounds of drag, that hook's not going to bend and you're not going to lose, your fish of the lifetime. So yeah, try to get a hook with, 7, 8.0, something like that. And colors. This is my favorite color. It's my second favorite color. If you don't have, any of these, get this color and this color and then try those out. Don't buy 15 different colors and try to reinvent the wheel. Or if you do have some, use whatever colors you think are going to work for you. But these are the only two I buy now, and I do pretty well on them. All right, so we're talking about Flairhawks. You want to find out where you can get these. You can get them at Gulfstream. This is a skimmerhead jig that I like. You can get the other kind if you like the other kind, but skimmerhead, it's got a wider, flatter head. First Light Jigs has them. Hooked on Jigs has them. You get these at the Snook, Whites. You can get them at, Bass Pro Shop, wherever. Or, there's a lot of guys that make these on their own. If you know somebody, seen on the internet or whatever, order your own and just, specify you want the 8.0 and, you want this color or whatever. But yeah, these are a couple places you can get these jigs that I'm talking about. Right, this is the lures I like to use. Gambler GZ, I think it's a 6.5 or 6.5 inch new shad. This is the new shad color that I'm using, and I got it on a 1.5 ounce jig head. I'll talk about the jig heads here in a second, but yeah, this is the bait. You can use an 8 inch if you want. If you're expecting really big baits, you can get an 8 inch, and the NLBN has a 5 ounce. A 5 inch, and they also have an 8 inch. So that's what I have depicted here. You can get the NLBNs at a bunch of places, plus their website. And I think this is like the key lime green or something like that. This is like some kind of, I don't know, smoked color, whatever. I don't think color matters that much, but I like the darker colors. At night, you're gonna have a dark profile. That's what the fish are gonna see. They're not gonna see a lot of colors unless you're fishing really close to a light or something like that. But yeah, you can get a smaller jig head from NLBN, or you can get a smaller one than this. These are homemade jigs, and I'll talk about those in a minute. Okay, so these are some of the jig heads that you can get. I think I got these from Gambler on their website. I think I got this one from Gambler. I think that's like a 3/4 ounce jig head. These are the H-style jig heads that I made on a Do-It mold. You can get those at Bass Pro Shop or Jan's, and I had to like drill out or Dremel out the configuration so that it would fit this 8.0 hook. This is an 8.0 hook. I think it fits a 7.0, but yeah, you kind of have to Dremel out the cavity in the mold to get this 8.0 hook in there, which is the one I like to use. And as you can see, NLBN, they have a really beefy hook too. So if you want to spend the money and use their heads, those are fine. So yeah, those are some of your options. You're going to want some lighter ones. You're going to want some heavier ones. But spend the money, get the ones that aren't gonna bend. All right, these are the shrimptail jigs. I got a whole seminar on how to use these, but basically on the shrimptail jigs, you're gonna wanna jerk the shrimptail up and down, and retrieve it in, like 2-foot increments. You're gonna wanna jump it like 18 inches high, 2 feet high, and then 2 feet forward. So you throw it out there, 30 or 40 feet, and each time, you're going to lift the rod, let it go down, lift the rod, let it go down, and that snook's going to hit it right before it tries to hit the bottom. That's when they're going to hit. They're not going to hit it when it's going up. They're going to hit it right before it hits the bottom. They're going to do like a reaction strike to it. Drives them crazy to see a shrimp getting down to the bottom, because when the shrimp gets to the bottom, they're probably not going to find it. So they want to intercept it before it gets to the bottom. So that's the purpose of using these. And these are the colors I like. It's kind of a natural Cuervo Gold, Coke bottle, root beer, and pink. These are my favorite colors. Although I'd stick to this if you haven't ever bought any before. Buy this color. Use it with a 1 ounce to, you can get away with a 1/2 ounce if it's not much current, and it's shallow. But yeah, I have all these 1.5 ounce jig heads, and that's pretty much what I use. As far as the shrimp tails are concerned, you can get them from Hooked on Jigs. Just tell them, you don't want the thumper shrimp, you want the ones that you made for Jay, or you can go to Hoagies, and that's not H-O-G-Y, that's H-O-G-I-E-S, and you want to look for the chubby shrimp. Hoagies out of Texas, a guy named Dusty owns that. So if you want to get some of these from the guy from Texas, you can get those, or you can use the Salt Strong Power Prawn. Those will work also. Now, as I mentioned, big fish, are going to require big tackle. You saw how close those fish were to the pilings. That's why you need, big tackle. And you also want 80-pound leader. They're not going to see your leader. It's at night, unless you're dragging it right through one of those lights. They're not going to see your leader. They're just going to attack this silhouette that they see going by them. So use the 80-pound so you can put the heat on them. You won't get frayed off. You can use 100-pound if you want. If you think there's going to be a 40 or 45 incher, maybe use 100, maybe use 125. Some people even use wire, and I think it's number 5 wire is the one that everybody prefers. They use wire. You never get frayed off on wire. So if you know how to tie wire and you're confident, you're still going to get bit with wire, you can use wire. For the braid, you want at least 30-pound braid, if not 50-pound, or you could even go to 80-pound. Might be a little overkill, but you want to have something when you put 22 pounds of drag or 20 pounds of drag that it's not going to break you off. Now, you're also going to want to have big rods. So, you want to have if you're in a boat, you want to have a 7-foot rod, maybe an 8-foot rod. If you're off a bridge, I'd go for an 8 to a 9-foot rod, get that extra casting distance. If you see those fish popping and, hitting a long ways away, you might, want to have that 8 or 9-foot rod that you can really whip your jig over there. And you're going to want to have a medium heavy to heavy rod so you can actually put the heat to them and, crank them out of there. All right, I like the casting reels because when you're using the casting reel, you can feel the line. You can cast your shrimp tail jig out there. You can pop it off the bottom. You can have you have the line running through your fingers, and you can kind of just have that extra sensitivity. You're not just waiting to feel the tip move. You can feel a lot more of the vibrations, and you can feel a lot more of the structure when you're hitting the bottom. You're not going to get hung up if you have a better feel. If you just have the tip, and you're just getting notified of when your jig hit the bottom from the tip, you might not feel it right away, or you might not be sure when it hit the bottom, and then you keep letting it go, and then next thing you know, you're hung up. So yeah, when you're using a shrimp, you want to bounce it off the bottom. But you don't want to sit there too long because there's all kinds of bad stuff down there, and the longer your braid splays out on the bottom, the more chance that it's going to get hung up. So yeah, I like to use the bait casting just for that purpose. I use the Okuma Komodo 463P. I think it has 22 pounds of drag. You can use a Dia Alexa if that's the brand you're devoted to. Abo Revo Toro Beast 400, Shimano Tranx 400A. These are all good reels, but I haven't had a lick of trouble with these Okumas for, I'm going on 4 or 5 years, and I have 3 or 4 of them, so you can't argue with that. Now, if you do like a spinning reel, you want to get one that's going to have at least 20 pounds of drag, and I have a Pin Battle 1, I don't even know how much drag it has, but it's a 6,000. I'd get a Pin Battle 3. I think it has 22 pounds of drag. I can't remember. I know it at least has 20 pounds of drag. The Daiwa Legalis LT 6000D, I know that's a reasonably priced reel. It's got more than 20 pounds. Shimano Spheros SWA 6000, I know that one has more than 20 pounds of drag. You can buy the Stella or the Twin Power or whatever, Spheros, whatever you want. But, these are some more reasonably priced ones if you're just getting into this sport. And, if you already have one of these, use one of these. If you have a more expensive model, then, use it, obviously. Now, I do have other seminars. There's one that looks like this is the thumbnail. It's just about the flairhawks. It goes over a lot of the things that I've gone over here today. So look for my other seminars if you're interested in just the flairhawks. Also, I have another seminar just on swim baits. If you want to get into more in-depth discussions about the swim baits, go look at my seminar that I have about the swim baits. This is the thumbnail for that one. And finally, I have a more in-depth seminar using the shrimptail jigs. Go over some of the same stuff, but a little more in-depth on that seminar than I did today. Something else I told the guys at the Stuart Rod and Reel Club was that, boating at night, it's not for everybody. If you haven't done it before, take it slowly, drive slowly. Make sure you have spotlights to light up any markers. A lot of markers are not lit. You got to figure out where those are, and it's not easy. So you can't just go by your GPS and think you can run around, at full speed and look at your little screen. There's people out there. There's people out there on kayaks and paddle boards that don't have lights. There's people in boats that don't have lights. There's floating, piling sometimes that are out there. You never know what's out there, and you don't want to hit something going super fast at night. And wear your life vest when you're running, and always use your kill switch. That is the law in the state of Florida, to wear your kill switch, and be safe out there. You have your spotlights ready, and when you're fishing in between these spans, you got to listen for boats. You got to look for boats. You got to be very aware of your surroundings and be ready to pull up on an instant. If some guy's running through the bridge at full speed, I would say get out of the channel, get way out of the channel, and get way out of their way so they can't possibly hit you. So that's my advice. If you like this content, please subscribe, hit the like button, hit the comments for any questions you might have, and I'll try to answer everybody's questions on here, and I'll try to help you all catch some more snook. Tight lines, Jay.